Hey there, how's everybody doing today?
Good,
Alan, how are
really
you?
good.
Great.
So it's so nice to have you guys here with us, in our social capital section. And we honor leaders who have realized that, the whole point of profits is people. And it sounds like something that's a no-brainer, right? But so often we have to remind ourselves of that in business. And we have to remind our viewers and our readers that that's what a lot of business is about. And there are a lot of business leaders who are doing business that way, and they're changing the world because of it. And you are certainly one of the greatest examples of that, Alan, for what you did at Boeing and then at Ford. Bringing back those companies in incredible ways, but not just bringing them back economically, but bringing them back in spirit, in the way that you treated people and the way you looked at people. And so I thank you so much for being here. And we also have Sarah MacArthur here with us as well. And I would love to hear your wonderful introduction to her.
Oh, you bet. Well, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for having us. The whole idea of social capital is fantastic because it really is about people working together to create value for the greater good. And there's not a time in our history that's not needed more than that now. So the fact that you're dedicating, your life to helping share this with everybody is really fantastic. Which brings us to Sarah. And Sarah, I'm so pleased that she has joined us and you've included her because Sarah is a really example of a working together leader of service that we're going to talk about. And she also has had a wonderful career too. She was a chief operating officer for Marshall Goldsmith, which we all know is probably the best executive coach ever in the world. And so she has been living this for her entire career. And she also is the co-editor with Frances Hasselbein, one of our most favorite leaders ever, for the Leader to Leader publication, which is also fantastic and is committed like you are to really helping further develop leaders for the future. And I'm so lucky that I asked her if she would like to join me. Marshall was very happy with that because Marshall and I were both working together very closely. So this threesome plus Frances Hasselbein is the all-time team that I've ever been on. And she knows all about the subject. She loves your work. She believes everything is all about people working together to create value for the greater good. And so we're really pleased to have her with you. So thanks a lot for inviting her too.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us today. It really is, about creating this network of like-minded thinkers and doers. You mentioned, Marshall Goldsmith, and, he was so kind to, introduce, us to you and, make that connection so that we could make this happen. And, it this is a way of thinking that it's been around forever, obviously, but we go, this goes back to Adam Smith and the idea of one of the first things that he wrote in one of his books is that no matter how selfish man may seem to be, what he wants more than anything else is to see the betterment of others. This is a guy that wrote The Wealth of Nations, and he's touted as being like the father of capitalism. And he's talking about this concept of helping others and wanting others to benefit. And we really believe that that's how capitalism works.
Right.
And that if you don't do that, it doesn't work. But so many other people, even though this is an age-old idea, see this as new, see this as something, exciting and transformative. And we love that because it is transformative. But it's been around forever. And it's interesting to me, though, that so few people know about it, but people come from different backgrounds and people come from places where maybe they haven't had the benefit of this. And that's actually one of the most amazing things about you, Alan, is, when you look at your background and when you look at where you've come from, I mean, everyone knows, the highlights of your background, obviously, at Boeing. I mean, you turned that company around in so many ways. I mean, there were just so many accolades that you acquired there, and then finally culminating in turning the company around economically, and then going to Ford, a company that was steeped in deficit, and then again turning that company around to having extraordinary profits. But the background that you come from was interesting because when you went to both these companies, you had this emphasis on people, and we're going to talk about that more. But you really believed that the way to do this was to turn around the spirit of the company, the spirit of the people. But your background is so incredibly technical. Engineering degrees from University of Kansas, and then you go on to MIT. And where did this idea come from? I mean, it almost seems like you're looking at two different lives when you look at you know, and people would love to hear this. I mean, I've read a lot about you, I've learned a lot about you, and I've never been able to really get to, how did you come to that mindset, that philosophy that we're talking about here, and that's really transforming the world now in so many ways? How did you come to that and think, hey, I'm going to go with this. I'm going into a major international company, and I'm going to say, hey, let's talk about people and how to help people. I mean, how did you get the idea to do that and the courage to do that?
Well, Chris, I just think that's what a way to start this meeting. I think this is really neat. And as you know, I really have never talked about myself over the years because I'm really about humility, love, and service at the fundamental level, especially the service of being part of teams to create value for the greater good. And so Sarah, I guess tell this funny story that Sarah and Francis and Marshall came to me not very long ago, and they said, "Okay, Alan, we're going to write this book, and it's going to be, the title of it's going to be Work is Love Made Visible." I said, "Well, that's great." They said, "We'd like you to write a chapter in it." I said, and I looked at all of the thought leaders that they had lined up, and I said, "You guys, there's not much more I can add to that. You got really fabulous content there." They said, "Well, no, the world needs to hear how you actually do this and why you do it, to your question." And they wouldn't go away. So Chris, I said, "Okay." So, but then they said, or they did go away, and then they came back and they said, "Okay, we have another idea. We don't want you to write a chapter. We want you to write the foreword to the book to set the whole stage for this thought leadership about leaders of the future." And so they wouldn't leave. So I said, "Okay, I'll try." And I said, what do you want me to write about?" They said, everybody knows who you are, and they know what you've done, but they want to know, how did you become this way? How did you become this person that you are and this leader you are? And so I said, "Well, where do you want me to start?" And they said, "Well, when you were born." Oh, okay. and so they left, and I sat down, got a piece of paper out, and Chris, I started to write this. And I found it so interesting because I'd never, with all the stuff that's been written about me, I'd never just in one place wrote down my formation and my development into a service leader. And so I was enjoying it. I finished it, and it was 2.5 pages long. 2.5 pages long, and I sent it back to Sarah, and she talked to the editors. And I was scared to death that they were going to, because it looked like an engineering document because it had some bullets and stuff, nice and clear. And so she turned it into the editors, and they called back and said, "We do not want Alan to change one word." And so the foreword to the book, Work is Love Visible, which is relatively new, has the answer to your question. It's the first time, Chris, that I've ever shared it. So let me give you a couple of highlights out of it. So my story, I grew up in Kansas. My parents were terrific. We had very little means, but they were great. And the University of Kansas is there. My parents were associated with them, and he was an accountant, but we didn't have very many resources, but we were loved. And every day, Chris, when I got ready to go to school, one of my parents would say things like this to me. Okay, honey, remember what the purpose of life is. And I'd go, oh, yes, I remember. It's to love and be loved. And my mother would say,
Wow.
remember, it's in that order. Oh, okay. Thank you, Mom. And the next day, my dad would say, now remember, honey, to serve is to live. Oh, okay, Dad,
Wow.
I understand that. Then they say things like, remember to seek to understand before you seek to be understood. And it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And then the one that really got me, Chris, was that they would say, now, honey, by working together with others, you are going to make a positive contribution to the most people in your life. And expect the unexpected, expect to deal with it. It's lifelong learning and continuous improvement. And respect everyone. We are all creatures of God and worthy to be appreciated and loved. And one that really was very valuable to me, because Nikki and I have been married for 52 years and we have 5 children, was that they would remind me, develop one integrated life that delivers your life's work, all the elements of your life. So I was a normal teenager, and we didn't have very many resources. And what I really wanted, Chris, was a pair of Levi's. All the cool people had Levi's. And they also had Norwegian shoes, loafers. And that's all I want. And I had no resources to get them. And so all of a sudden, I just kept thinking about this. And I was watching my parents work very hard and enjoy it. And they were both serving. And so I said, well, the only way that I'm going to get those Levi's and those shoes is and maybe a car someday, and maybe be able to go to the University of Kansas, which was my window to the world, is that I start to serve. And so my first work was always, from day one, was my service. So my TV guide routes, my paper routes, working at the Dillon's grocery store as a bagger, as a checker, a night leadership person, also construction, worked on the farm, worked on the ranch, and then all the way through college, I was an assistant to my professors because I needed to pay my way through the University of Kansas. And I worked for Beech Aircraft and Cessna, and then also I worked for my thesis advisor that you mentioned, Dr. Roscom, who was the head of aerodynamics at Boeing. And so through this whole thing, I love this service. Plus, I was appreciated and I was compensated. I remember when I was a bag boy, and I would take care of all of the groceries, and it was a winter time in the snow, and I'd walk them out, and they'd pay me all this money for doing that. And I said, oh, wow. And then the other thing that was funny is that when I became a checker, I thought, well, gosh, they're going to appreciate me, but maybe the money goes away outside of the salary. And I was the first person that Dillon's grocery store told me that as people came through the line, they'd actually give me a tip for checking their groceries out. So the manager of the store came out one time, couldn't figure out why they were doing that, and asked him, well, is everything going well with Alan? And I noticed you're giving him money. And they said, oh, absolutely. He said, why? And he said, well, he made sure that we had found everything we wanted in the grocery store. And he asked us if we had our coupons so we could pay for our groceries. So, I mean, he is really creating value in our life. And so with that, with my thesis advisor being Dr. Roscom, he introduced me to Boeing, and we were doing research for them at the University of Kansas. And then I joined Boeing, and I just couldn't believe the airplanes, but also, Chris, what they were about. These are commercial airplanes. And at the time, this was the first internet, because we actually got people together around the world. And I appreciated right away that people would find out they have more in common than they're different. And then we could choose to work together for the greater good. So I had a chance to contribute, be on the design team of every Boeing airplane, the 707, the 27, the 37, the 47, the 57. And then also I was asked to serve as the chief engineer, the director of engineering, and then the program manager for the 777 airplane. And then as a CEO of Boeing, I helped launch the 787. And if you look at all the Boeing airplanes that are flying today, nearly 70% of all the seats that are flying worldwide today are in a Boeing airplane. And then, as you pointed out, I got a call from Bill Ford. Whoa. And I'm going, Bill Ford, great grandson of Henry Ford. And as you know, Ford and Boeing are the arsenal of democracy for the United States. They're the reason we're free, are these two companies, these fantastic companies. So I felt like I was being asked to serve a second American and global icon that really wanted and needed help. And Bill Ford was absolutely fantastic. And so that's how I got to Ford. So the answer to your question is, that's who I am. And so I've always loved serving, and work is service to me. And it was always about the people, because when you're serving, you want to know how it's going. You want to know what they think. You want to know what you can do to improve the environment and the culture, about how we work together. So it's all about creating an environment. So, and the way we describe it is, it's a culture of love by design, because we actually designed it. We designed this as designers to have, 5 elements of a working in the management system. It was all about including everybody, including all the stakeholders, and they all know the plan, the vision, they all know the strategy, they all know the plan, and we're all working together to turn the reds, the yellows, the greens, and continually delivering value for everybody, but also profitable growth, because you can't help all the stakeholders if you're not growing the business. And so that's my story.
Well, I love so many things about what you said, but the essence of so much of what inspires people to do this is steeped in childhood in so many ways, shapes, and forms, and the stories of people growing up and having this, and it really is phenomenal. I mean, we were interviewing Ed Bastian from Delta, CEO of Delta, and
Great guy.
when I asked him about a similar question, he had a very similar response, actually, about his mom telling him, as he headed out the door every day, his mother would say to all their children, they had 10 children in their family, go and make somebody's life better today.
Cool.
And it's fascinating to me when we hear this from you, and the love and be loved concept is so powerful. I wrote a book about 10 years ago all about that concept. I was talking to Hubert Jolly of Best Buy. Again,
Another
that
good
concept, that concept came out. Love and be loved. That's the point and purpose of life and work. And people didn't talk about this kind of thing for a long time. And now we're finally starting to get this idea out there. And the fact that you grew up with that, the fact that you heard it so often, it was so powerful to you in the way that you just relayed that. Obviously, you had the courage because of that lifetime of hearing that, and that lifetime of having that validated. Obviously, you're a kid working in the store, and you give service and you get a tip, and it's being validated. That's the way to do business.
Absolutely.
So you go to work for Ford now. How difficult or easy, or what was the experience in trying to go into this major multinational company and convince them that that's the way to turn the company around? What was that like?
Well, that's really interesting. And to start with, Bill Ford is really, really a neat human being and a great leader. And he's also the titular head of the Ford family. And so one of the things, it turned out that initially when he was talking to me, I regretted on his opportunity, because I had one more airplane that I wanted to help design. And the kids were listening to my conversation on the phone with him, and they walked in after I hung up, and they said, "So, Dad, we're going to Ford, aren't we?" And I said, "Yes, we're going to Ford." And the reason I wanted to share that with you is that we're all going to have all kinds of opportunities and decisions we make, and we'll look at the issues and the opportunities from every possible angle. And at the end of the day, you have to decide. And my advice to people is share it. Share it with people you believe in and believe in you, and listen to how you feel about it. And so the minute that they said that, I knew that I really wanted to go serve and help Bill. And so another neat thing about Bill is he told me everything about the situation at Ford. And starting out with that their forecast for profits for the end of the year was a $17 billion loss. And in hindsight, we achieved that in that first year. Now, there was a lot of reasons why, as you pointed out. They were in real trouble. They had, and Bill told me all of this. They had become a house of brands. They had purchased Aston Martin and Jaguar and Land Rover and Volvo and Mazda, and they lost track of the beautiful blue oval and Ford, which was still 70% of their business. And so also they had become regionalized, and Henry Ford wanted to operate in every country around the world. He was at 50% market share, Chris, worldwide, because he was part of the country, of their economy. He was providing great jobs and great careers, but he never thought that they'd get so separated and isolated that there'd be no way to get synergy out of Ford worldwide. And we were competing against these global, fantastic companies, but they were global and they were working together inside. And also, we had kind of backed off on leading in technology, which we were always on the leading edge of, in quality and fuel efficiency and safety and smart design, affordability. And the agreements we had with the union, we were not competitive to compete in the United States and around the world. And so we needed to work together with all of the stakeholders, including the union. And then also we needed to get back in delivering the best cars and trucks in the world, in which we decided we were going to do that from small, medium, and large cars, utilities, and trucks. And the next piece was that we needed to take out a small home improvement loan to finance the restructuring of the business, but also invest in the new products and be able to handle a economic turndown worldwide. And the most important part of the plan that we came together on was that we needed to work together as one team, one Ford, worldwide, to implement this compelling vision of opening the highways to all mankind, this comprehensive strategy of restructuring, investing in the future, taking out a small home improvement loan at $23.5 million, and also working together as one team. And then the relentless implementation of doing our business plan review every week, where we included everybody. So when I arrived, I shared this vision, strategy, and plan. And of course, and I selected the team from around the world. It wasn't hard, because if you look at the performance reviews and the employee survey and just talk to all the stakeholders, they'll tell you who they believe in and who they want to work with. So as a new team, they didn't know each other. And I shared with them the working together management system I just described. And of course, they had never heard about this, especially this is going to be our culture of love by design. They want to know all about what that meant. And of course, at Ford, if you had a problem, you've never shared it because you need to have a solution, because that was a structure like most companies. And so we talked about it. And then we started the business plan review. And so we had all the stakeholders there. We went through this vision, we went through the strategy, and we went through the implementation. And part of that was that every member of the team would follow me as I did the introduction. They'd do the same thing for their area of responsibility, whether it was engineering or manufacturing or procurement or legal or communications. And if they had an issue in the plan and they weren't right on plan, then they need to color code their chart with a green if it was on plan, yellow if they had an issue but they didn't have a problem or didn't have a solution, and red, they had a new issue but they didn't have a solution, but they were working on it. Well, I knew this was going to be the test. This is going to be the test of trust, because their culture was that you didn't bring an issue to your supervisor, let alone the CEO, if you didn't have a solution. So now, Chris, you're managing a secret. You're all by yourself. You're stressed out. You can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
And you're not getting access to all of the resources that we have. So I started the BPRs, the business plan reviews, all the teams there. They're all networked around the world. And they started showing their charts and their behaviors. We were really clear about the expected behaviors. They were starting to move in a very positive direction to respecting each other and listen to each other and help each other. There was only one issue, is that all 300 charts that we go over in 2 hours were all green. So I'd stop the meeting, Chris, and I'd say, so team, now, and they didn't know before, we're going to lose $17 billion. Is there anything in your area of responsibility that's not going well? Just something little. And so I did that a few times, but they were scared to death. I knew this was going to happen, but I believed, I knew from all of those programs and at Boeing that we were going to get there. We just had to trust the process. So one day, Mark Fields is leading North America. He's having his version of the business plan review the night before ours for the company. And they just found an issue with an actuator on our tailgate that didn't work, and for a new launch of a Ford Escape. And so they stopped production because we said we're not delivering any vehicle unless it's absolutely world class in terms of quality and fuel efficiency and safety and smart design, et cetera. And so one of his he said to the team, so his team, I think this is one of those red things Alan's talking about. And one of his vice presidents, Chris, said, well, we can understand that, but what happens when you show that? What the culture is at Ford, what it was. He said, well, I think we got to trust him. And then another vice president, one of his vice presidents said, well, Mark, really nice to know you. Good luck. So Mark walks in, Chris. He walks in to our business plan review, and we start going through the charts, green, green, green. Mark comes up, green, green, green. And up comes his launch chart. And we're usually launching 30 to 40 vehicles around the world at any one time. And so a launch chart has the vehicle, then it has 3 columns for technical readiness, schedule compliance, and then financial status. And all of them were red, 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 red. The air just was sucked out of the room, and people's eye contact went from watching Mark and me to looking kind of down at the table, but kind of looking out to see what I was going to do. And they told me later, Chris, that they expected the 2 doors behind me in the Thunderbird conference room on the 10th floor of the world headquarters in Dearborn were going to open up, and 2 large human beings were going to come in and extract Mark from the meeting because he didn't have a solution. And so I started to clap. And then they knew that was a sign. It's all over for him. And I said, Mark, that's great visibility. And what can we do, team, to help you? And before Mark could say anything, Derek Cusack was the head of engineering, said, Mark, I've seen that issue on such and such. I'll get you that data right away. A similar comment from Benny Fowler, who is leading quality. And then Joe Hendricks, who is leading manufacturing worldwide, said, we're going to figure this out together. And you're going to need some manufacturing engineers in Oakville, Canada, to help switch out the parts and get the production going in a timely manner. That took like 8 or 9 seconds. Then we went on to the next green chart, green, green, green. Next week, one red chart again. That was Mark. And everybody's looking at me and they're looking at Mark, and they can't believe that Mark is still sitting there. So I did a horrible thing. Chris, on the way out of the meeting, I said to Mark, this is great, but I want you to come over next week and sit next to me in the round table in the Thunderbird room. And he said, okay, but I forgot to tell him why. And so the next week we walk in the meeting, he sits down next to me, and everybody around the table and around the world is seeing Mark close to me. And then when he shows his red chart again, everybody's going, holy cow, he has a red chart again. He hasn't solved it, and he's getting even closer to the CEO.
Okay.
And so, a couple of weeks later, they found a solution, turned to yellow. A couple of weeks later, they got all the vehicles redone, and they started flowing all around the world. So, Chris, what do you think the 300 charts colors look like the following week? Right. They weren't all red, because at any business, at any time, there's so many things that are going well. And so they look like a rainbow. There were greens, there were yellows, and there were reds. And at that point, I knew, and the entire team knew, and all the suppliers knew, all the stakeholders knew around the world that working together was going to work, because we were going to use this working together management system where it was transparent, it was safe to share what the situation was, and we were going to work together to turn the reds to yellows to greens. And no matter what happened after that, Chris, whether there were vehicle issues, because it's a creation process, you need to expect a change, plus all the changing world with tsunamis around the world and the economy slowing down. And then the big one, the near recession, a huge recession in the United States, when GM and Chrysler went bankrupt, and we were well on our way to create an exciting, viable, and profitably going forward. And so everything that we ran into, we all knew that if we used this working together and included everybody and respected everybody and appreciated them and created this safe environment where they could share everything and be a part of the team instead of being all by themselves, that no matter what happened to us, that we'd be able to not only save forward, but also create an exciting and profitably going forward, delivering value for everybody.
Wow. Wow. That's such an incredible story. And to take us into that room as those things were happening, to see the transition, right? I mean, that because, that's the hard part, right? I mean, so you've got a great idea. Now, how do you get everybody to buy into this? And, you have, we are going to definitely have to have you back several times to talk more and more about this. But I want to ask you the one last question here for today, because what you've done, which is phenomenal with this system, I mean, you've essentially, just to go full circle, I mean, you've applied your technical background and your love background and your appreciation of people, integrated them together and done what is extraordinary, which is actually systemizing or creating a systematic way to show love and acceptance. And
exactly.
And that's incredible. And how did you come up with that? I mean, that's such an amazing process, and I'm sure there's a lot to it. But did you just sit down one day and say, okay, I've got to figure out a way to make this something repeatable, or to make this something that I can teach? How did that come about?
Chris, you are really good at this. And that's a really, really important question. So now think about what we just talked about. And your three questions have revealed all of this. So as you pointed out, and as we all know, who you are as a person and a leader is going to have more to do with your effectiveness going forward than anything else. So you think about that formation, and then my further development at Boeing. Just start with those two. So I am who I am, all those principles and practices that I treasured and I left from my parents. And then I joined Boeing. Here's Boeing, the finest large-scale integration company in the world. These airplanes are the most sophisticated products in the world, carrying 300 people halfway around the world. Unbelievable products. And so their discipline for designing and making and producing and supporting these airplanes is the most sophisticated and the most reliable and the most disciplined in the world. So here I come, being me, and then I get a chance to learn that as a person in the system doing it. Not only the processes of doing it, the design processes, the manufacturing process, the integration of it, including all of the customers, the shareholders, the stakeholders, everybody, the FAA, all the certification agencies around the world, all of this working together. So I just started further evolving my formation to include the processes of the Boeing was using. And so everything I just described to you is a combination, just like you said, it's a combination of who I am as a person, believing in people working together. And now I have a reliable process, and also with expected behaviors that enable that to happen. And that's exactly what I use then at Boeing over all those programs. And then the ultimate was to go from Boeing to help Bill Ford. I just took that same model, that same management system, which is one page long. It's not complicated because it's all about we're going to have a vision, compelling vision. We got a strategy for achieving it, and we got a relentless implementation plan. And it's all going to be about a culture of love by design, meaning that every one of those actions, the behaviors in a process, is going to demonstrate to people that we love them, we appreciate them, and we thank them so much for delivering this compelling vision of safe and efficient transportation and getting people together everywhere around the world.
Wow. Yeah. What's so incredible about all of this, Alan, is this. You obviously have an extraordinary brain for looking at things systematically, technically, and then combining that with this impulse to love. The fact that this is so repeatable is what to me is so engaging about this and so incredible about this, is because it's important, obviously, the idea and the sentiment and the hard work that goes into just showing your love every day in every way. That's incredibly important. But the ability to teach that, the ability to replicate that throughout a company, I mean, that's where it goes from beautiful and amazing to world changing, obviously. And that's what you're doing and you've done, and this is so extraordinary.
Chris, just to comment on what you just said, that is so true, because you're learning this on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now, just imagine that we just asked you to join our team. So you're around that round table every week, and next week we're going to see you, and you have an area of responsibility, and so you put up a red, and most leaders will then start asking you a bunch of questions. Did you consider this? Did you do that? But when a leader does that, those are not questions. That's direction. So everybody's down there writing down action plans for what the leader's saying. I speak the least at the business plan review, and so if you said you had a red, I say thank you. I don't need to ask any more questions because you already told me that you have this issue, but you guys don't have an answer yet. And so, and I know I'm going to see you next week. And I know that you would never come into the team and say, that red item I had last week, I was kind of busy. So I didn't have a chance to work on it, and I chose not to. And so the hell with all of you guys. Really? Can you imagine what that's going to be like out on the playground? I mean, so all of a sudden now, the team is not working for the leader. The team is working for that compelling vision of what you're about. And you think about Boeing and Ford, safe and efficient transportation. In Boeing's case, the vision was get people together around the world so we could find out we had more in common than we're different, and we could actually work together for the greater good. And then Ford, opening the highways to all mankind. I mean, that's why when I arrived at Ford, the employee engagement was around 25%, Chris, and the employee satisfaction surveys were around 40%. And when I left 8 years later, both of those were over 90%.
Wow.
And so,
oh boy,
what we're talking about, and also all of the performance measures, the satisfaction measures from all of the stakeholders, the investors, the airlines, the suppliers, the communities in which we operate, because we network with all of them where the airplanes go. All of those measures, because we measure all of them, because we include all of the stakeholder-centered leadership using stakeholder-centered coaching. And all of those stakeholders had satisfaction ratings of over 90%.
Oh. Wow.
And so now, to your point, so you can't fool anybody, and you can't fool how they feel about it. And so they are feeling the satisfaction, the unbelievable satisfaction that can come from meaningful accomplishment and being loved and appreciated.
Yeah, this is so incredible and beautiful. I mean, there's no better word for it. Sometimes we look at complicated things, right? I mean, obviously, turning a company around sounds incredibly complicated. Uh, the simplicity of this is one of the most beautiful things about it. Uh, it's a system, obviously. It's not just, saying some words. It's a system, but it's a relatively simple system. And we're gonna do all we can to share
Okay,
share this as much.
Chris,
Yeah,
ask Sarah what Marshall Goldsmith says about what you just said.
Sarah, go for it.
Marshall always says when talking about Alan and working together that it seems like such common sense, but such nobody practices it. It's not
Mhm.
common practice.
Well, we are going to do everything we can to, promote these ideas and get as many people as possible to hear about them so they can emulate them. Um, I would love to just hear really quickly, Sarah, from you. Um, you know, uh, if somebody's trying to do this, somebody wants this. I mean, how are you guys doing all you can to get this message out there and get it to as many people as possible to change the world?
Great question.
Great question. Thank you. And thank you so much for having us. We love
Mhm.
being here. And this is how we do it is we talk with people like yourself. We work with authors. We have an article that just came out in Leader to Leader. What we're doing is we're sharing, working together every place possible. So that's our way we do this.
Sarah, Sarah and I learned so much about what Sarah just said because we're not just trying to tell people about working together because there's so many great ideas that people have, the authors, the leaders, and everything, and so we make ourselves available that they have an example that they can use that will actually help them. So if they're working on integrity or authenticity, whatever they're writing about,
Capitalism.
yep, all of those, yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
stakeholder-centered leadership that includes including everybody to create value, which is capitalism going forward. It's the future of capitalism. So whatever their message is and their knowledge and their contribution will help them by being an example that they can use. And then we'll actually, if they like, we'll actually edit the part that they use us and make sure it's just really captures what we're talking about. And so it's really fun because Sarah is a great editor, and she even said to me that I'm becoming a good editor. So so we want to get it out. We want to get it out there, but we don't want to just be telling everybody one thing because what working together includes is all the principles and practices, Chris, that you have worked on in your past, like you described. It includes all those elements in the plan, behaviors, how you do it. I mean, just think about it. It's that when you think about culture, it's who you are, it's what you do, it's why you do it. And the big one that you don't find so much information about is how do you do it?
Mhm.
How do you do it? And what you just said is this covers the how, but it also includes everything that you need to be successful at that.
So I love that you're doing some editing now, Alan. We are going to reach out to you both, actually, if you'll be so kind. We would love to have you write some articles for us as well and share some of these things in a little more focused tidbits here and there. And we really are trying to create a movement. So it's fascinating, the way you are creating a movement within business. We're trying to create a movement within culture itself to understand this and to really see that it's different. It's a sea change, and we believe that this movement is necessary for capitalism to really defend itself because there's a lot of detractors nowadays who don't kind of get it and understand. And we want to be able to say, hey, look, these are the business leaders, the titans in the industry who are compassionate, caring people and see business as an opportunity and really a responsibility to make the world a better place. So we want you guys to be as involved as you want to be. in supporting these principles and these ideas.
So, well, I think thank you very much. One thing you might want to consider, because you are unique also because of your background and your focus on business and working together and how do you create these environments, you might want to consider maybe an interview of us where you take what you've been doing today to another level of, how do you do this? And can you share that with us? And you can imagine, I can imagine with your background, you could have a list of questions that by the end of those set of questions, that article of that conversation would communicate everything that you are thinking about, as opposed to us just writing another article for you. Because we're not so much interested in doing that because we want to be supportive of people like yourself that are trying to get this message out. So like you could write an article about what you heard today. You could also say, would you guys consider doing an interview where I could ask you a number of specific questions that that you have found with all your other interviews are really on everybody's mind, on how do you link this together between capitalism and working together and people, because people are going to do it all. So that might be one thing you want to consider.
Oh, I love that idea. Yeah, no, that's there are so many extraordinary voices in this space now. And we touched on that a little bit in the beginning of some of the similarities, the commonalities of where people come from and where these ideas originate. But there's so much overlap in so many ways, and the strength of this just grows as you showcase those similarities and you showcase, okay, yeah, this guy did it this way, this guy did it that way, but there's a tremendous overlap there. Somebody, these guys must know something. They must know something, right? And because it's working, and they're all coming to the same space or place in different ways, but look where they're coming to. So I love everything you're saying. How do people get a hold of? Oh, go ahead.
So, Chris, just a comment about what you just said. See, that's a unique position that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking to all of these leaders, okay, that are creating value for the greater good, and so you're in a very unique position. It's nice to talk to you, and it was nice for you to talk to us. But if you think about maybe your biggest contribution going forward would be to think about those common things that you're hearing from everybody. And that's why an interview where you could get a little bit more information about us and what we're doing that links together with your other things, that's a contribution that you could make, that you're in a very unique position to do it.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take you up on that, by the way. And so we already know that you're going to be returning for another interview. You've already committed to it.
Very good. Well, it was a pleasure to meet you, and congratulations for what you're doing. It's a very compelling vision. It's a very important vision.
Well, thank you very much. And again, like I said, thank you for what you're doing and what you've done. I mean, you've changed so many lives. You probably have no idea how many lives you've changed, and how many people's mindsets and people doing business differently, but also living their lives differently because of what you're doing and the way you look at life. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Chris, and thank you for your leadership too.
All right, you guys take care now.
Okay.
Thank you.